I definitely know what it's like to be cloaked in shame and almost feel like you're suffocating. Shame is about what other people are thinking about you. It's external. There is such thing as healthy guilt where you realize I'm wrong and I feel terrible about it and it's going forward. I had to really find that avenue quick because shame takes you backwards and conviction is I was wrong and this is what I'm going to do to make amends.
Carl Lentz was once one of the most popular preachers in America.
Carl Lentz is the celebrity pastor
whose recent downfall has triggered a wave of scandals for the church. Carl Lentz.
You know, I lied to a lot of people. I've had to stomach that and will for the rest of my life. People often ask, how did it get so bad? Before you lie to anybody else, you lie to yourself. There's a lot of people watching that have had a bad chapter, maybe even a bad book. Greatest news on earth. At any time, you can change your story. Only you control that. Over half of marriages end due to infidelity. When I would get close to her for the first 2 or 3 months, the body would shake.
She would feel safe physically with you.
That's a horrible place to put your wife. You talk about shame. She just forgave me last year, and I asked her to pray for me. Man, I haven't talked about this. I should have saved this for my own podcast.
Welcome back. And for those who are familiar with Carl Lentz's history and the dismissal from Hillsong Church and the scandal that happened there, and you're asking why are we having him on this show, I can assure you it's not to put someone on a pedestal who's done something out of integrity, but rather to talk about how to recover after failure or heartbreak or going through challenges in life. This is a very powerful conversation, very real, honest, and open and vulnerable conversation. Feel free to share your comments below, and we hope we answer a lot of your questions. Welcome back, everyone, to the School of Greatness. Excited about our guest. We have Carl Lentz in the house. And Carl, first off, I want to say I'm glad you're alive.
Thank you.
Because I know that there was a season of life where you wanted to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a place of ending it all because of the massive breakdown that happened. You've talked about this on your own podcast that you started to talk about.
Yep.
A lot of secrets, scandal, a lot of pain and suffering that you experience and that others experience with your life. And my first question is, first off, I'm grateful you are alive and you're here.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
And my first question is, with the secrets, the scandal, the suffering that you've talked about, what was the biggest shame that you lived with? And what is the shame that you still have today, if there is any?
I'm completely healed. Great question. I think the biggest shame, would have been for sure lying to my wife. And it was so bad where I look back now after, I've done a lot of work as you have, so you learn a lot of ways to track your own patterns and behaviors. And towards the end of our time in New York, I had a really tough time being in proximity to her. And I now know it's because I couldn't look her in the eye. I just hated the lies I was caught up in. And I just didn't know what to do. And I think the shame of that took me a really long time to get through. And as you know, with shame, it's not like it's something that goes away forever, but for me, I've learned I can be on top of it better than other times. So for me, I've moved away from the shame of a lot of it, but I remember it and I treat it with reverence in such a way where I'm never going to be like, oh, that didn't happen. No, it happened. And God's been faithful and he's been kind and he's been gracious. And thankfully that shame doesn't have to have a hold on me. And there's a lot of people, as you know, that deal with shame. So now when I do talk to people, they're not doubting whether I get it or not. Maybe before, if someone were to sit down with a pastor, I don't know if you can relate. I definitely know what it's like to be cloaked in shame and almost feel like you're suffocating. And I don't know if you've ever heard this differential, but someone told me shame is discouragement about what other people are thinking about you. It's external. That's one definition of it. And once you can get over that, and guilt, there is such thing as healthy guilt where you realize I'm wrong and I feel terrible about it and it's going forward. I had to really find that avenue quick because shame takes you backwards and it suffocates. And conviction is I was wrong. This is what I did and this is what I'm going to do to make amends. there's power in that. So I've done that dance for years, and doing my best to stay on this side of the tracks where it's I'm convicted to be a better man.
Sure. That's cool, man. And for those that don't know who you are, who maybe aren't in the Christian communities or in the church world, can you give a brief context of who you were then, before the massive scandal and breakdown and, fallout of you being a pastor in a church, and what happened? Again, you don't have to go into massive details, but kind of a brief context of what happened into where you are now.
So if you're not familiar with the church world, we were a non-denominational church that had a global reach, and our music at Hillsong Church has been, world renowned, really awesome. And in many respects, Hillsong gave people a different way to do church. Like, you're never going to walk into a Hillsong church and be like, this is boring, or this is, weird. It was something that made sense to the regular person. That's why I fell in love with it. And in New York, we kind of took that to a very New York place, because I had a boss, his name was Brian Houston, who gave me the right to paint our own canvas. He was like, I'm not going to tell you what to do there. I don't live in New York, you do. So take the spirit of this house in Australia and build a church, and we did that, and it was cool. I think that we made a big impact in New York, and it included the people who nobody knows and some people that everybody knows. Yeah. And those people got all the press. It was never a big deal. It's a big deal to the media. They're like, people are Christians? Yeah, they are, tabloid. It happens. So our church became really high profile.
And how big was the church at that time? Like, how big did it get?
I mean, Hillsong Church all over would be like 100,000 people. In Sydney, probably it was like 40 to 50,000 at one time. Ours probably over 10, anywhere between 10 and beyond. But it was a big church, and it was a really incredible time. I had some issues in my life that I never addressed. And when you have a life that's smaller, you can get away with more. And not even get away with it, you don't have to address stuff. But as you know, if you're running from yourself is going to catch yourself. Mm-hmm. And you can't outrun yourself. You can't do it. I did for a long time. I was like an Olympic runner from myself, like gold medal winner from running from myself. But eventually it doesn't work. And it was found out that I had cheated on my wife. And that led to a whole unraveling of scandals that included the greater Hillsong Church. Other people had some lies that were wrapped up. And, my part to play in that was, I lied to a lot of people. And I've had to stomach that and will for the rest of my life. And I'm not proud of it. I'm grateful that I get an opportunity to, live a new kind of life that's honest. And, the fallout was severe. We were a high profile church. So it was like one of the most covered church scandals ever, and it was hard for my family, hard for my wife. And we have done our best just to walk through it, as my wife has been brave. My kids have been brave. And I don't get any credit for my role in this. I mean, the fact that my family still, is open to me is a miracle in and of itself. But that's what happened. So there were documentaries made about it. There was, countless narratives out there floating around, most of which weren't true. And we had to deal with a lot of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was my fault. So it's even when it comes to lies and narratives and accusation, even as mad as I wanted to be at some of it, it's like I could never get beyond the fact that I did this. I put my family in a vulnerable place for somebody to lie about us. And I remember making a dedication. I will never do this again. I will never give other people the power to control or hurt my life and my family. That's what you do when you lie. Yeah. You are giving up your agency because someone else now has the right to, confront, and then you have no ground to stand on. Yeah. So when you get caught lying like I did, and then people don't know what is the truth. What else is a lie?
You lied about this. Maybe you lied about everything else. Was he really honest about this? Yes. Right. It's like they can now judge and
very fair
everything.
Yes, and that's
okay. Maybe you're telling the truth here, but can I trust you that you're telling the truth?
And you have no ground to stand on because you're like, that's true, but that isn't. Well, how do I know? Because if that lie is real, if you were lying as a preacher and a pastor, that goes pretty deep. So how do I know everything you're saying isn't tinged with a lie? And you learn quickly when you're in my shoes, I cannot control that. All I can control is the real truth, the real story. And by the grace of God, if somebody else ever understands, great. I have to live a different life, and I have to convince my wife and my kids that I'm worthy of a second chance.
Wow.
So if anybody else ever believes me again, that would just be an awesome blessing, but I'm not living for that, because those people have the right to judge however they want to judge. I can't force you to believe I'm honest. I can't do it. Honesty in truth is about investment. It's about, I'm going to give you equity almost, because I don't know you, and I'm going to trust that you're a good person. And so for me, I have given up that task. Early, I used to think, how am I going to get people to trust me again? Now, my only thought is, I live honest.
Wow.
I live honest.
Because I can only imagine when all this is unraveling, and I've listened to your podcasts and, talked to you about this privately, but I can only imagine the ego in you wants to defend, try to repair quickly, try to get people to understand you, what you were going through, create the full context. People don't know the full truth. And okay, maybe there's some stuff I did that was really, really bad, or that was wrong, or whatever, but it doesn't mean I'm all bad. I'm sure you wanted to defend and reply and make statements. I'm sure the ego wants to protect. How did you navigate the unraveling of everyone questioning you, some of your closest friends leaving you and not speaking to you again, feeling betrayed by people, even though you betrayed people as well? How did you navigate your ego and your heart, and also trust in God?
That's
I'm throwing
such
a lot
a
at you here.
good freaking question.
I'm throwing a lot at you here. But.
Let me try to trace some of that back. I think I got a piece of advice from a very dear friend who said, you can't save your ass and your life at the same time. Something's got to give, and you got to make a choice. And what he meant by the other one is just reputation, image, your narrative, your story, or your life. And if you choose this, you have to choose it all. There's no Instagram post. There's no one interview. It's, I am foregoing the right to explain myself and defend myself, because that doesn't matter more than my family does.
Wow.
I cannot do both. I was in such a dark place in my own life that if I would have spent any time trying to do that, I don't think I'd be sitting here, because it took every ounce of focus and desire to be able to go confront my own demons, and I couldn't do that with the pressure of trying to. It was just something we had to let go. And me and Laura stuck by my friend's quote. He said, Carl, you gotta let the rain fall. If you can let the rain fall, there's gonna be some stuff that's gonna grow, but you can't get in the way of the rain. It's gonna let it go, let it rain on you.
And it might take years of raining.
Man, it was years.
There might be floods.
And there might be some drizzling clouds for the rest of my life. That's my consequence.
Interesting.
But we have become really strong and focused and united, where we're ready for storms now. We don't run from storms. In that regard, we're like buffalo, the only animals that run directly into it. So as a family, it's like, man, we have been through so much that you don't know what we're made of. People there's always going to be cruel people in your comment thread or whatever. You're a giant public figure, so you know that. You have the best podcast in the world. There's that one guy with 3 followers who's like, you're terrible. And it's like, that hurts. But at the same time, nobody can call me anything worse than I've called myself. So that's off the table. So it's like, man, you can insult me all you want. Trust me, I'm a worse critic of myself, than you are.
Wow. So
go for your life. If it makes you feel better to insult me, do it. If it makes you feel better to get on and send a comment, do what you have to do. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But that's part of the journey, is getting yourself to a place where you're able to stand in that storm.
Man, I mean, I've experienced an immense amount of shame throughout my life. Decades of shame. I've lied, cheated, stolen, been unfaithful in the past in relationships. I've done all these things that I'm ashamed of, right? Or was ashamed of before I started to repair and start moment by moment, day by day, shifting my identity and my behaviors and living in a different way.
Yeah.
And the more you stack up those, moments of integrity, of high values, of honesty, of sharing the things that you're ashamed of, even when I don't want to tell this person, but I'm going to tell them anyways because I know it's my truth.
Bingo.
Hopefully they accept me, but maybe they don't.
Yeah, that's the risk.
The more you do that, the more you can drop the masks, like we talked about before we started recording. You can start to reveal yourself and to others, and start building and repairing with self and others who want to be in that relationship with you. But it starts with the relationship with self and the wounded self. And you and I, both experienced sexual abuse, sexual, stuff that happened to us younger. And I heard you talk about this when you went to rehab and therapy, that the chemistry in the brain really gets messed up when someone has been sexually abused at any age, right? Something like fractures in the brain where you think a certain way about the world, you have trust in the world, and then you no longer have that thought or trust. Something gets fractured.
Yeah.
Especially at a younger age. And then there's a lot of shame about what is wrong about me.
Why am I doing this?
Yeah, what's wrong with me? Why did this happen to me? And that shame and that doubt can creep into anything until you address it, mend it, heal it, and repair it. For me, it took 25 years until I started that process. And I'm assuming it took about 25, 30 years for you too.
Yeah,
until,
I'm 45.
Yeah.
So
it took some time until you kind of addressed it, started healing and working on that journey, which is a journey. And then there typically are behaviors that come up. For you, it was certain addictive behaviors. For me, it was other addictive behaviors. And everyone has their vice, right? We all have the vice that creates.
Yeah, some are more judgy than others.
Yes.
Some vices are are tougher to stomach than others, but they're vices nonetheless.
Yeah. They are. Some are drugs, sexual stuff, porn, masturbation, whatever it might be. You lean into something that creates a sense of comfort or something that you can avoid a feeling.
Yeah.
And that causes more
to
shame.
get a feeling.
Something else.
Yes.
Some other feeling.
Yeah.
To avoid the feeling of pain and suffering and shame, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of addiction can stem from, is this shame or this feeling of, I don't want to address the wound. Yeah. Because it is so painful. Now that doesn't, when we do something out of integrity, it doesn't excuse those things, the behaviors, the actions, and the pain that is caused on others when those do that. So I'm curious about how you've dealt with the suffering yourself of like that insecurity or shame of like, I'm supposed to be this preacher, right? Yeah. Is the thought. I'm preaching to people. There's 10,000 people coming every week. Celebrities are coming to me, leaning on me for wisdom and spiritual counsel. Yet I know I'm living a mask in some ways. Yeah. However much judgment you want to create for that, right? The levels of judgment. Yeah. How have you been able to repair that relationship with yourself about those years where you were suffering and feeling the pain? Because I can have empathy for you, but also the tens of thousands of people that might have been thinking, gosh, was everything a lie? He was doing all these other things, but telling us to do something else. Like, could we trust or believe anything? And also, does that mean my relationship to God is not real? How have you navigated that? All of that. That's, the pain that you've suffered, but also the pain that others have suffered. Yeah.
It's the top 3 question premises I've ever been given. Thank you. Golly. I think, okay, let me try to go from, so people often ask, how did it get so bad? How do you get there? Yeah. Well, before you lie to anybody else, you lie to yourself. So at the end of my rope here, I had lied to myself for so long that I was lost completely. And it's the only way you can survive. Unless you're just a horrible, evil person, you are not designed to live with lies. You're not. Can't survive. But I had found a way to run from something I didn't understand. And it just was, I remember when I got to my rehab, a counselor asked me, why'd you let it go so long? And I was like, well, I didn't want to hurt people. She goes, oh, so you're the hero. Oh, you're the hero in your story? You were hurting people the entire time. And that was the beginning of the end for me with my facade. Because I realized, because up until then, I still had excuses. And I'm glad what you said. Doesn't matter how many times we say this, People are going to hear what they want to hear. When you give reasons for why you hurt people or made mistakes, they are not excuses. They're just ways so people don't have to do the same thing. There is no excuse for my behavior. There was no excuse, none. I was wrong. I wanted to change my life, so I had to go backwards. And I've been doing this for a long time. I'll do it for the rest of my life. But I went all the way back to my sexual abuse, which I didn't start acknowledging until I was about 30. And I was praying for people at church who were sexually abused. And I had flashes in my own mind, and it just freaked me out. And I kind of tried to tell my parents a little. My parents are incredible. They are my heroes. I was abused by a house guest. And as a parent, it's your worst nightmare. It's like, the one time you turn your back situation.
Yeah. For me, it was the babysitter that I would go to, the son, like a teenage son of a babysitter that they would send to after school. Yeah. Which is like a nightmare because you send it to someone that you want to trust, right? Like a babysitter.
Yeah. And so I had to start dealing with that because as I got older, those were more prominent. I started to realize how bad that moment was of abuse and what happened in my life. And then, so as I'm going all the way back, it starts to make sense. So I learned about brain chemistry. What happens when you're a little kid and you get sexually twisted. I was never faithful to a woman my entire life. I had 2 girlfriends in 6th grade. Why would I do that? Like even back then I couldn't understand, like, why would I always had a penchant to do something in secret and in private, even if I was perfectly happy.
With every girlfriend?
I'd have an amazing girlfriend that I was totally okay with. This is great. And then I would make a bad decision in private and I would hate myself for it. And I don't know why I loved it. I don't know. What is that I loved? And it took some of this deep work to understand, like in my brain, I associated, that day, sex with hidden, private, quiet. And as a kid, maybe something felt good. Even we learn that in abuse circles, that sometimes your body reacts to stuff that your brain has no idea about. So as I grew as a pastor, I ran out of places where I could feel anything because my adrenal glands, were in trouble already. And we had such a big life that was kind of a impacting life on the outside that nothing really impacted me anymore. Like I would always feel the weight of it, but it's not like speaking in front of crowds would be awesome, like it's like what you live for. It was just part of my job. And I used to find these escape valves that were hidden sin, and they would get worse and worse and worse. And then it gets so bad you don't know what to do, and then you just start living with it. You're like, well, it's so far gone now, Lewis, what am I going to do? If I'm honest about this, it's everybody that's tied to me, every job, every employee, every parishioner, everybody now is in this because of me. So what am I going to do now? And that self-loathing was a horrible, suicidal place to be.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you ever feel suicidal as a preacher before kind of this started to unravel, or was it more once everyone hears about what I've done or my behaviors or my actions or even the lies that they're making up as well? Now I'm suicidal.
Yeah, I'd never had a suicidal thought before that chapter.
Really?
And they were big. They were
afterwards. They were big. How close were you to like wanting to end it?
There's like obviously suicidal ideation is kind of the beginning of some of that picture, and that was constant. Really? And it got probably to a place where I had envisioned, this is what I'm going to do.
Really?
If I do this is what I'm going to do. So we're on the doorstep, and I am grateful to God that in that moment, I just realized, I've been so selfish. The ultimate selfish top card would be to now bail on my family and my children. So not only was your dad, he lied and he embarrassed you, and then he left. And I thought, I don't know if I'm ready to do that because I don't find any worth in myself, but I don't want those.
Gosh.
I don't want these babies to have a dad on top of this that left the earth because he couldn't handle his own music that he pressed play on. And so I can only give that credit to God because I don't have that kind of strength. I don't have that kind of confidence or wherewithal to go, I'm going to try to own some of this. And so I'm so grateful that that didn't take place. I'm grateful that I found a way out. And I don't look at what happened to me as I got caught and God was mad at me. I look at what happened as God loves me so much that he allowed some of this to happen so I could somehow, salvage the rest of this beautiful life we have in front of us.
Wow.
And there's old scripture that everybody knows, even if you're not a Christian. It's, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And there's a part in there where it says he makes me lie down in green pastures and he restores my soul.
Wow.
Makes me. And in the image is a shepherd pushing sheep down who wouldn't lay down.
Forces.
And I see that now.
Wow.
And I wanted the restores my soul without the
The pain.
without the force to lay down.
Wow.
And God is too good for that. And I sit there and I go, I wasn't going to sit down. I had been running forever. And that situation was he makes you lie down in green pastures. He restores your soul. He restores your soul. You can't have the restoration without the lying down. And I'm going to try to help as many people as I can avoid that in that way. Everyone's going to have a makes you lie down moment. Everybody. But there's a different way to go about it than lies, scandals, heartache, pain. But that's been my story. Psalm 23 is where I stay right now spiritually. I read it a lot. I think about it a lot. I meditate on it a lot.
Really?
Because it resonates with me in a different way. The very first thing, the Lord is my shepherd. Well, it means I'm not alone right away. I have a shepherd. I have a boss. I have a protector. I have a redeemer. I have someone who cares about me. So I'm not alone. The Lord is my shepherd. One verse of this beautiful psalm is enough for me to think about every day and go, all right, I'm not alone here.
Yeah.
I'm cared for. I'm counted. I'm known. I'm seen. And that's a hard place to be.
Yeah.
It's a hard revelation to have when you haven't wanted people to see who you are. And
You've been hiding these parts of yourself. Yeah. I mean, I lived for a long time not wanting to reveal all the shameful parts of me.
Yeah.
And like you said, it just kind of keeps building. Like you keep hiding it until you get found out. Something gets found out. Something gets revealed, or you go through a very sick time. Like the universe creates a near-death experience, a physical breakdown, a spiritual breakdown, a relational breakdown, something if you're not living that past. Like it causes you to wake up.
Yeah.
However you want to interpret it, right? It's like, and this
what are you going to do when you wake up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to wake up or are you not?
Yeah. Yeah. What are you going to do with it?
How much more pain do you want to experience? What about, how have you navigated? So it sounds like that's how you've been able to navigate kind of your suffering and your pain and like your journey, but how have you navigated
suffering of the people?
How have you navigated the suffering of the people that, looked up to you, or they looked up to church culture, pastors that they, put their faith in? And also, how have you responded to people, either privately, publicly, those that you were close with, those that maybe felt you violated trust with them in certain ways, privately or publicly, that you never met?
Yeah.
How have you navigated that?
Very hard. Very great question. I think you have to come to terms and make peace with the fact that, in this 12-step plan, when you make amends, it has to be where it's appropriate and safe for the other person. And there are, for me, and then if you're a public figure, which is a terrible term, if you have a life that's in public, the desire to make amends personally is not realistic. So you have to find a way to make peace with that. And the way I've done that is I've decided to try to use the rest of my life to make a living amends, in that we could go off into hiding. And people have asked, why would you guys do this? And I'm like, good question. I think
it's move to another country.
It's the lazy answer. It's lazy. And I think for me, it was a selfish choice for me to live a life in public, fall. And then the thought of now just keeping this to myself, this healing, like I don't know if you have experienced this, but I have access to help that not a lot of people have. And it's not fair. I remember going to rehab going, how much is this? Oh, it's no wonder. No, but who can afford this? Yeah. I had people send me there. Paid for me to go.
And you go for a month. Who has the time to go for that long?
Who can do that? So I feel like part of my living amends is to let people know about what's helping me. I'm not an expert. I'm not a guru, but I am somebody you can probably relate to. And unfortunately, like Laura and I are now like, well, for the 98% of marriages out there that are broken and rough, we're with you. Let's talk. We can't help you. If you're in that 2% where everything's great,
perfect,
we're not for you. But we got to use what hand I dealt us. And that means right now, to make living amends, in my estimation, I'm allowed to narrate that as I want. That's what I'm going to do every single day. And if there's a reception for it, cool. If people want it, great. If they don't, I get that too. But I'm going to try. And then if that doesn't work, I'll try something else. Personally, when I see someone, it's a joy. It's an honor to be able to look someone in their eye and say, I'm so sorry as your leader for misleading you, for lying to you, for breaking your trust, for mishandling your beautiful investment of trust that you gave me. And my prayer is that, and I know God is so good, he's not going to let this be something that stops you from a relationship with him. I know I did that well as a preacher. I never pointed to myself, ever. So one of the few things I did right was be able to teach people that the grace of God goes through somebody. So when you see somebody preaching, don't get caught up in the preacher. They are just as fallible as you. You might not know it, but they have their own issues. I am an example of God using a broken thing to help produce beautiful things in people's lives. And God can do the same thing for you. So I have heard from people that have been disappointed and hurt, and they say, but you taught us right. You taught us to look over the human, because you're just a preacher, just a communicator, just a pastor. You're not a deity. And then there's some people that are probably still mad, will be mad forever. I get that too. My heart goes out to them. I pray for them. And when I'm able, I make amends. But that's the life that I have to choose to live, and I have embraced it.
Wow. And so you've seen people face to face that.
I have.
What was that like when they kind of look at you maybe with a little judgment or frustration?
Never one bad experience.
Really?
Not one. Mm-mm. Normally it's tears on both sides right away.
Really?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Have someone come up to you and just been like, I can't believe I trusted you and I was in your church for this many years, and like said, I don't care what you say to me, I'm never going to forgive you. Have you had an experience like that, or just like?
I've read experiences like that.
Yeah.
But never when I see people in airports or on the street. Normally it's unbelievably encouraging to me, and I feel overwhelmed that God is that kind, where someone who has the right to say whatever they want to say chooses that route of, disappointed, hurt, but sometimes people will say, you gave grace to me, and you prayed for me. And so
when I was going through my stuff.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Gosh. And that's not owed, but my gosh, it's appreciated.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, this brings up the concept of, there are a percentage of people in the world in all types of churches who have experienced pain from their priest, preacher, church leader, or someone in the church. You hear a lot of cases about sexual trauma, psychological trauma, just different types of abuses that people hear about.
Yeah.
And it's probably not, it's there, but it's loud, right? So it's not every preacher is doing this. It's not every church is doing this, but there are people who have horrible experiences that are just like lose faith and trust in religion, priests, preachers, church leaders, because of what they've experienced, right? My question is, I'm friends with a lot of spiritual leaders in different religions.
You are.
Preachers in the Christian faith, but also in Buddhist, leaders. I'm friends with a lot of people that I believe are doing their best to bring spirituality to the world. And I also know that human beings are flawed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Human beings are flawed. I grew up in a very, I would consider, humble religion, a Christian religion called Christian Science. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before.
A little bit. You've mentioned a little bit, yeah.
And the thing, there's judgmental people in every religion, right? I found people that were judgmental in this religion growing up as well.
How would you sum up the baseline of Christian Science?
Christian Science for me is founded by a woman in the late 1800s who learned to heal herself by reading the Bible. She was experiencing a lot of physical pain, and she wrote another book called Science and Health, which is the key to the scriptures. It's kind of the spiritual and scientific interpretation of the Bible, which can be confusing for a lot of people. What does this mean? And what is the scientific, spiritual interpretation of this? But growing up in this religion, it was all about we are spiritual human beings. There is no matter. There is no physical. Human. Now, we live in a world of physicality, but it is our duty to rise above it and be spiritual. Be mind with a capital M, conscious with a capital C. love with a capital L. And how can we stay in that space of spirituality as frequently as possible? Now, as a child growing up and having sexual desires and being like, well, I'm injured. What do you mean? I'm not a physical being, right?
Yeah.
But it was all about, okay, if you feel an ailment, if you feel sick, how can you heal it with your mind, with prayer, and with knowing the truth that we are spiritual beings, and therefore you cannot be harmed in the kingdom of God, right? So there's a lot of beautiful lessons, but the thing that I wanted to speak about in this religion is that there's no preachers, there's no priests, there's no like leader of a church who could feel like they have a lot of power in this church.
Yeah.
There are, and in some ways, it's kind of boring to go to church.
Yeah.
Because there's no fancy music, there's no lights, there's no charismatic leader on stage, storytelling.
Yeah.
It is, you go and there are two people who are appointed to read the exact lesson of that week from the Bible and the Science and Health. And they read what is the words here.
Yeah. Okay.
And they are appointed by the community of the church for, I think, 1 or 2 years. And then 2 other people read.
Interesting.
And they read and they don't say anything else. So it's not about them at all. So in a sense, I appreciate that it was never about a leader having like any power with their community.
Yeah.
It was the community appointing people and then reappointing new people every year or two. So it was always changing. And you followed kind of the script of what the Bible lesson was that week.
Okay.
But in some ways, it's kind of boring.
It's a give and take.
It's like, okay, you sit there and you have to really be present.
Yeah.
You have to really be like, this is a silent, almost meditation and prayer.
Okay.
And I'm listening and it's peaceful. We sing hymns.
Yep.
But they're old. It's not like these cool, like fancy, like, oh, we're like hip hop hymns.
Hillsong hymns.
Yeah. This is not like, oh, we're like dancing and like feeling the Holy Spirit up in here. You know, this is, but there's also almost a protective sense to it that it's safe.
Okay.
You know, so what is your thoughts on preacher culture, people having massive personal brands and kind of almost having this authority to
fantastic question.
Like charismatically, because they're great communicators, they're great storytellers. They might be great spiritual human beings too, but really captivate and move audiences and bring people in and make sure that how are people protected from that power, that energy, that force of community that is also into that energy. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong.
No.
But to also be aware of
the pitfalls.
This is a human being.
Yeah.
They are not God.
Yep.
They're preaching a word that hopefully is inspired through them.
Yeah.
And to not let the message and the messenger get too mixed up. I don't know if this is making sense. I'm trying to.
It is. It's freaking making a lot of sense. Your layered questions are unbelievable. I mean, I've seen it from my phone, but to actually sit here and have to field that question, it's like, Lord Jesus. I think, so it has to be said that I think it's 100 to 1 faithful pastors and priests to the ones who end up on the front page for living lies. Me. 100 to 1, if not 1,000 to 1.
Yeah.
And that's what's hard about situations like mine, because that's going to get the press. The guy that's faithfully serving his church, loves his wife, takes care of his kids, preaches faithfully about Jesus, that no one wants to talk to that guy. So it's awesome to have a moment like this to be able to tell everybody, like, you know what? Most of the pastors and the preachers that you're going to be around, they're awesome people. They're incredible. The trade-off of a super charismatic gift is that it's going to go bad. It's going to always go bad. Not every time, but as long as that's in the picture, there's no answer for this, because humans are going to human, like we say. You know, there's no such thing as a perfect church, because if there were, nobody could go. So there's always going to be preachers that fall, but I feel like that's life. Like I don't want to trade somebody's beautiful gift because of the fear of. To me, that's a robbery. And I'd rather take my chances that God's going to be so faithful where my stories like mine will set preachers up behind us safer, better. And he can use a disaster like I went through
Right.
to be able to, maybe we can see in the future less preachers end up on the front page for the wrong reasons because of the lessons that are passed down. And so I get the criticism of it, the personality-driven churches. I'm always like, there's a funny word play. People are like, you're not supposed to entertain. You guys are entertainers. Well, do you know what the word entertain means? To captivate for a long period of time. That's true. If that is true, you know who the greatest entertainer of all time was? Jesus. So captivating that people would follow him through deserts, that they would risk their lives to get up in a tree just to get a glimpse of him. So I always push back on the church is too entertaining. To who? First of all, get out more. People used to come to our church and be like, oh, it's like a rock show. A rock show? Have you been to Madison Square Garden? Have you seen U2 in the bubble? If this is a rock show, you need to expand your world. So to your point, I think I have hope for a brighter day. I think mistakes like I made, sin like I had hidden, I can go back to when I could have helped myself. And I was about, I didn't know. I didn't know what I needed to excavate.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that's my path, Lewis. I really don't. I often have that conversation with God on some dark days. Like, you couldn't have shook me awake and forced me to go tell somebody, hey, I got sexual issues. I got habits. I got inclinations. I got desires. I don't know what to do with them. Up until now, I just push them down and run, but they don't go anywhere. And if someone could have sat across from me and said, let's talk about sexual abuse. Let's talk about pornography's effect. Let's talk about what it means to have multiple sexual partners. Let's talk about what it does to your brain. Let's talk about how just because you became a Christian, that stuff's not going to vanish.
Right.
Which is sometimes what if I just will follow God hard enough, this stuff's going to dissipate. That's some people's story. I've never known it. I've never met one person that has a story where just because you made a choice to serve God in a different capacity, all of a sudden every single thing you've ever done loses its power. It loses its eternal power. You're forgiven, but the consequences of sin, they don't just evaporate. So I feel like we have an opportunity. That's why I'm doing this. I would love to continue to do what I was doing for the first 2 years, which is nothing. Taking care of myself,
Right.
taking care of my kids, taking care of my wife. And everybody else can sort it out. God bless you. I'm going to make money and I'm going to do something that, is better for us. That would be the option I would choose. But this life isn't about us. So you're going to hear me talking about my humiliating moments for the rest of my life because that's the only way I can redeem it. And I'm okay with that. I've come to peace with it. So yeah, that's the guy who, I'm that guy. I'm definitely that guy. But tell the rest of the story. I am the guy that had a great church. I am the guy that was known for this, and then he became known for this, but I feel like I'm known for this now. So please tell the whole story. And I like that seat because there's a lot of people watching that have had a bad chapter, maybe even a bad book. Greatest news on earth. At any time, you can change your story. You can change your chapter. You can change your narrative. Only you control that. As much as we want to believe it's somebody else, no, it's not true. God can forgive you. He can pick you up. You can write a new chapter. And there's a lot of us on that road with some scars and some ugly stories. But my gosh, we got smiles again. It's possible to smile again.
Right.
And I didn't think that was going to be possible, but I don't think I've ever been more comfortable in my own skin than I sit here with you post-scandal, with everybody knowing the worst of you. I'm okay.
Why do you feel good or okay? Maybe not good. Why do you feel okay about you post-scandal, post all these things that have happened? And everyone knowing or thinking and assuming all sorts of stuff.
I'm honest. My wife knows me. My kids know me. My friends know me. I've got nothing to hide. I've got nothing to prove. That's a dangerous place to be in the best way. I look at myself as a positively dangerous human being because I got nothing to hide over here. And I did pretty well hiding. Like I was functioning on 40% health and we had a huge impact. So if I can just get to 45%, heaven forbid 80, 90, maybe we can really make a difference in this world. But I'm comfortable. I'm at peace. I'm okay with people thinking what they want to think. I was never okay with that before.
You weren't okay with people?
No,
What?
I had a deep desire to be understood. and it robbed me of a lot of joy. I wouldn't do something because I didn't want someone to perceive it away. I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that, and I would worry about this. I'd lose sleep over that. I look back at it now, it's like all those people I was trying to appease, they're terrible. They weren't there then, they're not going to be here now. Why would I ever live like that? So that it's been a fun journey of just being comfortable, waking up like, there's nothing over my shoulder coming. Like, I didn't really enjoy a lot, Lewis, before, because no matter how big the win was, I got something back here.
Really?
That could come back to bite me. So everybody else could be celebrating a win. We took some ground, did something great, but in my heart, it was never like a full celebration.
You couldn't celebrate.
I felt I'm a liar.
Because from my understanding, you were probably the most famous preacher, pastor that there was at the time, right? For a number of years, you were like building a movement. You had a lot of press and awareness because of your celebrity, the celebrities that were involved in your church that you were working with. So there was a massive audience staring at you all the time, right? Is what it, from my understanding, you're one of the biggest.
Yes.
In the Christian world, you
Sure.
were one of the biggest leaders for a number of years.
Yep.
But you weren't able to appreciate or enjoy
No.
it because you knew you were living this lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I rationalized it and
Yeah.
compartmentalized it. Everybody, to a degree, you're going to have some things that people aren't going to know about. It's not even their right to know.
They don't need
That's
to.
not
Don't need
what
to
I'm
say
talking
everything about your life. Yeah.
I'm not saying every preacher in the world has to be like, hey, here's like, that's not what we're talking about. That's not real vulnerability necessarily. But yes, the kind of stuff that I hid and buried, I said to somebody, I thought I was burying lies. I was really digging my own grave.
Wow.
Every day you live with a lie and you think you got away with it. You didn't get away with anything. Nobody ever gets away with a lie. Even if nobody finds out, you robbed yourself your whole life.
That's true.
The moment you live with a lie, your heart is being taken up, space is being taken up with a lie that was meant for love.
Oh,
So
man.
if you start piling up those lies like I did, there's no space for anything else. Like, my arms were filled. I can't have any joy. I can't have any presence. I can't have any peace because I got to carry all these. You let those things go. All of a sudden, why do you feel so free? Why do you feel so light? Because I got room, I got space.
Right.
So you make the decision when you lie to take up space in your soul for something that was supposed to be healthy and beautiful and lovely and kind and explosively joyful. You choose the lie. And I have empathy for people that are doing that because I did it for so freaking long. All the way, because I never told anybody about that abuse. No way, it was buried. Never told anybody about my private life in high school.
Mm-hmm.
No way. My parents found out I had sex when I was like 14, and I began lying immediately. I remember the day I lied about it, and that was the beginning of this cycle that landed, on some big news cycles decades later. So there is joy and freedom, though, in discovery. There is, and it's one thing to get caught and be upset that you got caught and change some of your behavior so you can kind of just keep on living. Someone was like, would you have stopped if you didn't get caught? I'm like, thank God I'll never have to know that dumb hypothetical. Like, I don't know. And God's so gracious, I haven't had to find out. I did get caught, and I didn't turn myself in. I got turned in. I didn't valiantly come to somebody and say, here's what I'm doing. That's not my story. My story is embarrassing. It's humiliating. And it still led to me, having a discovery about who I really am. And I gotta stand on that.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like you could continue to have all this outwardly success, but suffer inside for decades and never really be able to enjoy your life and your marriage and your kids because I'm living a lie, or I'm a liar, or I am a lie. Even though everyone's praising me, I know something is off, and I haven't addressed it with me or the people closest to me. So you're going to suffer. Unless you're a sociopath and have no emotion, you're going to suffer. And you're probably to create cancer, disease, some type of pain that will manifest.
Have you heard somebody say, if you don't heal what hurt you and cut you, you will bleed on those who didn't hurt you or cut you?
Yeah.
I resonated with that when I heard that. I was like, oh my gosh, because I didn't. And the effect isn't even the people, like I never got back at the guy who abused me. Never wanted to, by the way. I mean, I made peace with that, wrote him a letter in rehab, and that never went anywhere. But I was done. I mean, to do what he did to me, he must have had, I don't even know what would happen to somebody like that. But I feel like that is such a huge part of recovery, is getting to that place where it's like, I'm hurting the wrong people. Like my kids are suffering. They suffered during that scandal, and because I didn't heal. And I will never do that again. And I'm going to be in the middle of the road for anybody else who might have some questions. Hey, I got some stuff. Cool, man. I'm your guy. I can just show you what
messed
happened.
up. I'm here for you.
I got you.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not ashamed of you. I'm not embarrassed about you at all.
It's almost it's like you have an opportunity. I don't know if you watched that movie, Catch Me If You Can.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
It's like the guy who
Brother Leo. Yeah.
wrote all the bad checks and stole money or whatever from everyone. And then went to prison, but then I guess got out, and his life became about helping the government, like catch people, and create better systems, and like, okay, now I need to serve, and pay my debt almost, and just be of service.
It's called the grace reversal.
Really?
The very thing that was killing you and you are using to kill becomes the very thing that gives you life, and you help others find life through it. Wow. Only the grace of God can do that.
Really?
Yeah, we can't. I can't do that. Nobody else can make that happen. But if you have lied as a public figure, and somehow God gives you an opportunity to tell the truth again, that's a beautiful thing. It's like someone who commits a crime, and then they go into prison, and the whole prison gets help because they're there. Whatever it is, like whatever your situation is, if you're willing to put your hand up and say, I can't do this on my own, my invitation is that God can help you turn that thing around. Yeah. You're in control of that. That's comforting.
I listened to the podcast that you and your wife Laura have done. There's 3 episodes out right now at the time of recording this that are extremely powerful. You go into more detail about specific events, what happened, what didn't happen. We don't have to go into all of that, because people can go listen to that and hear more, and make their own judgments and listen to whatever might be there. But Laura has been, one of the people that you've bled on, from all this, from the pain, the sadness, the suffering, the lies. And man, to hear her, meeting her last year, and to hear how she has responded, and how she has taken her power back and started to go to healing, using her voice, creating boundaries, creating a powerful relationship with herself first, so that she can see if she wanted to stay with you.
Yes.
It's fascinating to hear her talk about this. And even her say, I told myself growing up, like, if someone ever did this to me, there's no way that I would stay. I'm out. I would leave. If they ever cheated, if they ever lied, I would never be with this. I would never put up with this. And then she says, and then you're in the middle of it, and you have to think about things differently.
Yeah.
And it is amazing to hear her journey of also being shamed on by lots of women, messaging her, telling her, you're an idiot for staying in this relationship.
Yeah.
Once a cheater, always a cheater. He's going to do this again. And I can't believe you're not leaving and standing up for yourself. All these different things that women have said to her, right?
Yeah.
But to her to make a choice to stay with you, why did she choose to stay with you? And how is your marriage different now? 2.0 version.
Yeah. My wife is, she's a hero to me, to my kids. She's unbelievable. You've met her. She's explosively Australian. And our love is really deep. I think that that can get lost sometimes when you read about people you don't know, and you see stories, and it's like, no, we're regular people just like you. Like we've been in love for a very long time.
How long have you been married now?
21 years.
21 years, yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a long time, and we dated for a couple years before that. So most of my adult life has been eye to eye with this woman, and I think she's gonna continue to speak for herself. And I think what I love about watching her do that is she did take the harder road, but it wasn't what people think. It wasn't like, I forgive you. She just forgave me last year.
3 years in.
It was the first time, and I asked her to pray for me. And man, I haven't talked about this. I should have saved this for my own podcast, Lewis. No, I said, will you pray for me? And she said, I can't.
I can't.
I said, why? She's like, because I haven't forgiven you yet. And she sobbed. This is in church. This is a quiet moment in church. And then she said, I'm going to choose to forgive you. I forgive you. And it was such a pivotal thing, because I never expected her or had a condition that she forgives me, ever. It was just, I'm just happy to be here. happy to be here. And if it ever comes back around, cool. But I don't expect that. So she had really clear conditions. She had a support system of people. She had a bank account set up. She had a divorce lawyer ready.
Wow.
We were gonna separate, but it was the logistics of that time were just a nightmare. And had it been more normal, she probably would have left. But yeah, she gave me an opportunity to back up the words that I say. Because when you're in the situation, words are words.
Yeah.
And
I'm not going to do this again. Yeah, I don't believe you.
who's not going to say that? And so we had very, very clear boundaries.
Really?
And my job is I get my orders every day. That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm an employee. Like, hey, what do you need from me today? Let's go. Let me look at this. Okay. And I've learned to relate to that in such a beautiful way because it's a joy. It's not. I don't get defensive if she's like, hey, I was triggered yesterday. Why? Because I don't know why. Maybe early on it was like, I can't do any more than I'm doing. And then you mature and you grow through that.
You would do that?
Absolutely.
Say, I'm trying to do everything. I'm telling you where
I
I'm
would
at.
get frustrated sometimes. I'd be like, what more do you want? And I was normally good, but there were moments where it would be like, what more do you want?
Yeah, you're like, I'm checking in every hour with you. You have access to every password. You're on you have bank accounts, this, that. You know everything I'm doing at every moment.
Everything I'm doing. And
you know where I'm at. You've got a GPS on me. You've got
I've got an ankle bracelet. I've got a monitor. I've got a heartbeat checker. Like, you know how many steps I've taken today.
Yeah.
And I think then you have to get to a place as a man, the one who broke the trust, where you realize, hey, guess what? This isn't ever going to be about me, ever. And you do what you need to do. So now it's, hey, I feel triggered. I don't need a reason. My response is, what can I do? What can I do? It doesn't have to make sense. It really doesn't. Because what I did, sure, it didn't make sense.
Right.
So why am I looking for answers for you? So, and we've gotten to a really cool rhythm, beautiful rhythm. And there's always going to be moments where she's going to question me. That's my consequence. I'm up for it. I'm not running from that. I'm just going to try to give as much evidence as I can that I'm worthy of the opportunity she's given me.
Wow.
And I don't have another shot. It's not like there's
you can't slip a little bit and be...
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
There's not like and having said that, she's been gracious in my recovery because I haven't done it all right. I have fallen on my face since I've tried
During
to be
your recovery?
sober. Yes.
In what ways?
I had a relapse early on, and it hit me by surprise in such a way where I was able to tell her, this is what happened. I feel like I know the pattern that I didn't see coming, and she agreed. So it was a pretty specific situation. But all that to say, it's not like I've had to live on this perfect tightrope. She's not like that. And I could sit here all day and talk about Laura, but she's the light of my life, and I'm grateful that God gave me a chance to redeem some of this. So we ended our first marriage. We're on our marriage number 2, and it's a beautiful one.
The first marriage has to die.
Oh my gosh.
It has to.
You cannot. Have you ever seen somebody like try to make an old beat up car? They put rims on it, and you're like, bro, why didn't you just save that extra $5,000 and go towards just a better vehicle? Now you've got that old car with some shiny rims. I think sometimes trying to repair brokenness can be like that, where it's like, you know what, let's just give this chapter to God. It's over. Marriage number 2.
When did that start? Was there a ritual you guys had? Was there a moment where you said, this marriage is no longer ours? Like, I'm not in this marriage anymore. If we're going to do this, we need to create a new marriage, new vows. I don't know. What was the process or ritual like?
So I heard a woman named Esther Perel.
Yeah. I've had her on many times.
Have you?
She's
You
great.
got to throw it out like that. Like, a hero of mine. She's your friend. Got it. No, she has a lot. She has a lot to say. And I heard her talk about that concept at work. In
her
Florida.
podcast, or she's got a podcast that talks about like how to repair relationships that have gone through infidelity and
and she is a beast. I mean, in the most respectful way that you use that word. And I came back, I told Laura, this is what I heard. Let's do that. Let's shake on it. It's been real. First marriage.
Really?
Marriage number 2. Boom. And it was like, for both of us, just fresh air, because that marriage is done. It's the second marriage. So we both get to know each other again. And it's beautiful. You're on the precipice of one of the best things in life, which is marrying the woman you love. And you don't know who you are when you get married. You have advantages because you're a little bit
Little
more
older. Yeah,
accomplished in life. But when you're 20-something years old and you're sitting there taking marriage vows,
You're a baby
oh
still.
my gosh, you're not the same person the next day. Like, you don't know who you're committing to. I look back at Laura staring in my eyes, early 20s, going, I give you my life. I trust you. We didn't know who we were. You know, so now at 45, we're both 45. We feel better than we've ever felt, more honest than we've ever been, more authentic. We have more fun. We have better intimacy. We have a better rapport. Like I'm able to be who I always envisioned I could be for her.
Really?
Yeah, because there was this big blockage called the lies and the fake me that was between my wife and I, and that's not there. So she's able to see more of me, and I'm able to see all of her, and I'm overjoyed with it. If we can do it, I think there's a lot of people that can have hope that they can do it too.
And it doesn't mean if someone has betrayed you or lied to you or cheated on you or whatever it might be that you need to stay with them.
If Laura was here, she'd say 8 out of 10 should go. 8 out of 10. So this isn't like a condemnation of people that left. Leave marriages when they're dangerous and they're in trouble. Or Laura would say that it's the man's responsibility to do the work. If he does the work and he shows up for it, then you have reason to maybe consider.
Right.
But this blanket, I'm going to stay married because that's God's will. Number one, wrong. That's not right, firstly. And secondly, you have the right to protect yourself. You have the right to walk away biblically, especially if somebody has broken their vows and you feel threatened in any way. That's right a lot.
How does that, I mean, because there's so many people that say once you get married that you're set for life. That's what the church or the religion has either told them or influenced them or... So how can someone who is a religious person or who believes in marriage to one person forever thinking and believing that's God's way, desires, or the church's desires, and if I get divorced or separate, then God won't love me, the church will disown me, people will judge me. How does someone navigate that?
Well, right away, if someone thinks that, there's a fundamental flaw in their prism about who God is, because they, in their mind, their salvation still has something to do with their performance, so in their mind, they're thinking, I did stuff so God would love me, and if I don't do those things, God won't love me. They haven't necessarily been shown what the grace of God is, which is mercy and favor and love that you don't deserve, but you get it anyway. You don't deserve this. God gave it to us. So I didn't earn it. Therefore, I can't lose that. So that's the first thing people understand. Like, God's not he's not a conditional parole officer where it's like, Lewis, you were great in February. My gosh, gold star, my guy.
Yeah.
Now, March, you're on the fence. We don't know who you are. I don't know. We're going to see how many times can you go to church this month. And then me and the angels will have a look at helping you out. A lot of people, that's actually their framework, and it's very sad and it's painful to watch. But it's when things go wrong, it's not God's plan that was the problem. It's humanity.
Yeah.
So it's not like the institution of marriage that God set up is wrong. I don't know about that. Why? Because someone broke the pattern and broke the plan. So I think removing that, and Laura would have something to say on that because she did struggle with her relationship with God for a little bit because she did everything right. She was faithful. She was resolute, disciplined, faithful, and did all the right things. And she was put in this horrible position. It's fair to go, is any of this real? Like, I mean, it's easier for me because I made all these mistakes. So it's easier for me to come to grips with it. But for her to do nothing wrong, and have to carry the weight of that, it was a big thing. But she got through it and she's, in a beautiful place with that. But it was definitely a challenge.
And not to get too personal here, but you mentioned intimacy being, great between you guys. How does, a woman who has been affected, and maybe only Laura can speak to this, but what she's told
I can relay,
or what she's said on the podcast that you guys have talked about, what has she shared on how she's been able to allow herself in intimate sexual moments with you to feel safe again?
Yeah.
Like, how has she been able, what has she shared so far?
It's a lot of work. I think that it's been a,
Because she's had to go through her own healing journey on her own.
Yeah.
Which she talks about in your guys'
yeah,
podcast.
she does. She does. I think hers was, she's a fighter though. Like, so there's two ways to handle triggers: run away from them or freaking go at them. And she's that type of person. Like, we just left New York, and some people are like, did New York trigger you? She's like, I'm not going to let my husband's old bad decisions rob me of the greatest city in the world.
Wow, that's interesting.
But that's her framework.
That's interesting.
So she thought about that with the bedroom. She thought about that with holding hands. It's like, she can let this trigger her the rest of her life because that represents my husband's infidelity, sexual, emotional, physical, or I can go confront that thing. And she chose that. And there were some really hard moments. Like I've shared, you know, when I would get close to her for the first 2 or 3 months, her body would shake and she wouldn't know. That's hard to deal with.
She would feel safe physically with you.
Her brain is here. She's trying to talk to me, but her body is shaking. And that's a very, very, very horrible place to put your wife. And that's, you talk about shame.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good.
No, those are the tough ones. Those are the hardest moments. And nothing to do with public thinking, anything like that.
No one sees that.
Pales in comparison to trying to hold your wife's hand. And her body's petrified of you. And that's part of my journey, my consequence.
Wow.
So yeah, it has intimacy. We found out is much obviously deeper than sex. Sex can be sometimes a part of intimacy, but we're intimate with our conversation and our proximity and our outside of just sex. It's
You can look each other in the eyes.
Yeah.
With
yeah.
consideration, care, thoughtfulness.
I could be across the room, she's across the room, and I know that somebody in that room sees me. That's cool. That's a good feeling.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
What would you say are the 3 biggest lessons your wife has taught you in the last 4 years after all of this scandals have come out?
The 3 biggest that she's taught me.
Either through her words or through her behavior or...
It's beautiful. I think she's taught me to be kind to myself. And coming from the person who I harmed the most, that's an interesting messenger.
Mm-hmm.
She's taught me to be kind to myself. She's taught me to be present and enjoy the blessing. Because I go from being sad and sorry to like, I always got to do something. Like the guilt that I fight daily is a part of my process, because it doesn't matter how good it is. It could be like, you know, like we lost everything. So I always felt like I was on this climb to, I know this is good, but I got to do more, I'm so sorry we're in this spot. I'm so sorry. Even with my kids, I had to work through some of that guilt. Because anything they do wrong, I'd be like, it's probably because I did all that.
Yeah.
And that's not even on them. I had to really step through that. And so she taught me how to be present. And she taught me to love again.
Wow.
That's what my wife has showed me.
That's amazing.
Be kind to myself, enjoy the blessing, and love again.
You know, it's interesting. A few relationships ago that I was in, it didn't end well. And no need to go into it all, but I was out of integrity in some things, and we were off and on, and it just didn't end well. And she wanted to go public with all of her thoughts and feelings about it on social media. And during that time, I felt like, what do I do? I was kind of like very mini moment compared to what you had.
Yeah.
It was like, people are thinking things, they don't know the whole story, like all these things, right? And I remember feeling a lot of sadness for people that I'd known for years that wouldn't even like just reach out and be like, hey, what is going on? Can I like hear from you what's going on?
I know that pain.
Even if you want, even if you did something out of integrity in the relationship, like, can I at least hear from you and just get context or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
That didn't happen. So it was hurtful, right? And we talked about this before we started recording, how, when this happened for you, some of your closest friends just disowned you and just said, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And obviously that's their own feelings. And I remember feeling like, shoot, I don't know who's on my side, who trusts me, who doesn't trust me, like what's going on here, this is happening. And it just felt like, what do we do? Now, it wasn't to the extent that you had, but it was like a mini feeling of that. And I was interviewing a guy at the time. I kept interviewing, which I don't know how I did it, because I was like I was like all over the place.
Yeah.
And a guy named Robin Sharma, I told him, like, this is what's happening, this is what happened, and this is what I'm dealing with. He's probably in his 60s, right? Maybe later 60s, I think. And he goes, yeah, I've had a few of these things in my life. And he's sold, like, I don't know, 10, 20 million copies of his books, and he's very successful and accomplished. He just said, I've had these things in life where you go through breakdowns, where you go through breakups, and then there's like sadness, and there's this, and there's hurt, and I've hurt people, and they've hurt me, and it's like, and you don't know who your friends are, and these different seasons of life, right? And as a public figure, you're going to have more of that in terms of, like, it's going to feel bigger. And he said, a bad day for the ego is a great day for the soul. And for whatever reason, that stuck with me in that moment.
I love that.
And something unlocked inside of me, because I remember thinking about all the challenges that I faced, the pain and the suffering that I faced growing up.
Yeah. Things
that happened to me, things that I did wrong that caused me to learn lessons as well as a kid growing up. Breakups, breakdowns, injuries, all these things that were bad, right? Bad for my ego or myself. And for whatever reason in that moment, I was like, oh, every bad thing that's happened has turned me into who I am now and has gotten me to this place. And so this bad situation is going to unlock a different level of, hopefully, lessons, blessings, abundance, peace.
So good, bro.
Healing, forgiveness, all these different things. If I choose to dive in and own it all and kind of like do the healing journey, it will unlock.
Yes.
And I remember thinking, like, yeah, there's nothing I would change in the past from injuries and this and breakups and pain, because the lesson, and people say hindsight is 20/20. And so in that moment, I was like, I'm stepping into future hindsight. I'm stepping into 2 years in the future, 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future. I'm going to look back at this like I looked back 10 years ago from being injured and how I thought my life was over from a dream, but it actually set me down a new course that can impact more lives, that can impact me and people around me better. And I go, this is only going to benefit me if I choose to believe it and do whatever I need to learn in this process. If you could go 10 years in the future, it's been about 4 now, and your healing journey has evolved and you feel a lot more peace 4 years later, and it's going to be ups and downs, I'm assuming, for many years. If you could have future hindsight, and 10 years out, what is the meaning you think you'll give yourself in 10 years for why this has happened?
Oh, gosh. Out of all the layered questions today, that's a heavy one. My goodness. Why won't you even think about politics? That's what I don't understand. There's a lane for you. Okay, first thing, just a quick, you said ego, and I don't know if you ever heard someone explain it as ego stands for edging God out. I love that, because there's a healthy part of our confidence that we're not talking about, but there is something about eliminating anything that is self-generated, and you just go, God, have your way. That's the first thing. When you said that, I was like,
me generated, not God through me. Right?
Yes. Like I can't do this on my own. With God's help, I can do this. So I think I would look back. I think the meaning of our lives is to always point to how good God is, no matter what it is. I wouldn't have chosen this path. I mean, if we're sitting, as 20-year-olds, like, hey, write what you want to be doing when you're 40, 45 years old, I would not have said this, but I have changed the way I relate to it as well. And I've changed the way I relate to my sexual abuse, changed the way I related to my own infidelity. And now I look at that as something that it's a crucible moment where you come out of the fire and you're just not the same. So I think the purpose of my life is to always point people to a loving God that can change your life, no matter what it is. So that hasn't changed. And I think that we're in a really broken world, Lewis. It's getting darker and darker and darker. That's why we call this thing Lights On, because we still have control over where we shine lights. And I want my life, it might be a dingy light sometimes, and it might be not as, but I'm going to try to keep my light on. And I want to tell other people that there's hope, no matter how dark it is. We're going to keep the lights on over here. We're not going to turn them off. There's no way. And you can't turn yours off. There's people probably watching that have long time ago shut down the restaurant and the lights are off. You just need one person to just flick one light,
Yeah.
and that's how it starts again.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard in your podcast, which again, I want everyone to go listen to, it's fascinating to hear you and Laura talk about healing, trauma, dealing with the relationship, the mistrust, the betrayals, friends, family, having kids. Like, it's just a messy situation that you guys have navigated, and you open up about how you've navigated, what you guys have learned, vice versa, what you're still learning. She talks about how, you talk about how she did nothing wrong. She was always faithful, loyal, trusting, honest, like whatever you wanted to do, she was there for it, supporting wife, mother, leader of the church, like faithful, all these things.
Yeah.
But she starts to say, you know what? I never had a voice. I never really owned my power. I kind of just, I don't know if she said blindly trusted, but it's kind of, that's what it felt like.
Maybe more apt would be co-pilot.
Yeah. I was codependent, she said.
Yeah.
She's living a codependent relationship and lifestyle, and she didn't own her voice. And when she went to therapy and healing and had counseling, she talks about that in your guys' podcast, which is really interesting. And I want to speak to the women, because we have a large female audience, to the women listening or watching, who to give women tools on how they can own their voice and power better in relationships, whether everything's going great and perfect, or they're unsure about stuff, or they're somewhere between, maybe in their first year of relationship or 20 years deep in a marriage. I want women to have tools to own their voice and own their power, to get clarity on where they're at in the relationship. Whether it's little white lies, bigger lies, whatever it might be, but to create better relationships with their partners.
So good.
And hearing Laura say, I never really had an opinion or a voice. I didn't know how to make decisions. Hopefully I'm saying what she said correctly.
It's in the ballpark.
She was like, I needed to learn how to get my power back.
Right.
That took time. I needed to learn how to practice it, because it's something I'd never done in 40 years. I needed to learn how to do it while healing, trying to forgive him, dealing with friends.
Being a mom,
all these things.
Teenagers.
Dealing with my own health. And it's a lot for women. I think it's a lot for women to try to learn how to.
The toll is greater.
The toll is great. There's a pressure. There's a insecurity. There's judgments from other moms. All these different things. What do you think Laura would say, or what has she said to you about how women can own their voice better in any type of intimate relationship, whether there's some potential lies or stuff happening or not, but just to I'm going to deepen and strengthen my relationship to get clarity if this is the relationship I want to continue thriving into, or potentially it's not the right relationship for me.
I think she would say, and we've had so many conversations about this, put the growth of yourself in your own healing, put that first, regardless. So when you get to rehab, they have this beautiful moment where they say, hey, everybody, this is not a marriage restoration place. We don't give it about your marriage. That's not why you're here.
The rehab.
You're here to fix your life.
Interesting.
And if you fix your life, your marriage will grow. Get your marriage out of your picture. We are not here to save your marriage. We're not here to help you with your wife. You're here to fix all the lies and the deceit and the crap that you've been doing your whole life that put you in this position.
Wow.
No one wants to hear about your marriage. Nobody. And I was like, okay, I wish you could make it clearer. And I got it though, because I was like, I'm not here to fix my marriage. My marriage is actually a product of my broken life. Therefore, if I'm healthy, it makes sense that my marriage will be healthy. I think what happens, what Laura has told me with women, is they just sometimes can put so much emphasis on, I want to make this marriage work. How can I make my husband understand? How can I support him? How can I make him better? All that stuff is huge and important and valid, but not at the expense of you growing and you thriving and you getting the help that you need and you getting someone to invest in you. And I think she would say, make yourself a priority. Like you have to. And that means doing separate things. It means getting your own help. It means having your own life. And when that is thriving, this life over here of your husband, there's this beautiful symmetry that can happen with two healthy people. But normally there's this horrible thing where the wife is so awesome and she's healthy and she's trying, and this husband's is a bum.
broken.
He just refuses to change, and it's just so sad to see. And there's vice versa, where it's like you gotta. Sometimes it's more rare, but you got a husband who's trying, and the wife just has given up. Man, it's a dark road. But if both people, especially because in our household, I can't speak for any other household, but Laura's roles are immense. You know, I mean, from mom to friend to wife to lover to provider at times. Like, where is she in all that? And I think it's my job to help protect her ability to hear her voice, know her voice, feel it. And that was just not really on my radar before, to be honest. I mean, I'm not proud of that, but I didn't know that concept like I know it now. I thought I did, but I thought in my estimation, I was like a trailblazer going to make a path for my family that I love. And I don't know. I don't know if that's not the way I live now at all.
What are the things that men in relationships with women or married men can say to their partners or wives on a consistent basis to make them feel seen, heard, and safe?
I will talk about what I do.
Yeah. What do you do with Laura
to make her
feel that way?
We have a really cool cadence of, my question to her commonly is, how can I make you feel safe? Do you feel safe?
You say that all the time.
Probably every day. Yeah. How can I make you feel safer today? And it's gotten to the point now where she's like, I feel safe. I feel freaking safe. You know, I can't feel safer. But that is such a non-defensive, non-aggressive question. It's not loaded. It's, hey, how can I make you feel safer today? Do you want my phone? Do we need to go have dinner? Do you want flowers? Like, what can I do? And if that's a part of your routine, I think it's a really powerful thing to have, because it has nothing to do with you. It's not like okay, tell me what you need just so I can get to this. Like, why don't you do this for me? Because sometimes I've talked to husbands and a lot, especially in these 4 years. And it's like, I tried what you said and it didn't work. I'm like, it wasn't an event, bro. Like, whatever I explained to you, let me re-explain it. Like, it wasn't I'm going to do this and it should produce this.
It's a way of living.
It's a way of being.
Yes.
And being is different than doing. If you just go straight to the do, you might get the have, but you miss out on the be. And I work with some coaches at Novus Global. I don't know if you've heard of this firm. They're phenomenal, but they really go through a concept called be, do, have.
Yes. Yeah.
Rather than what do I need to have? What do I have to do?
Yeah.
If I get around to who I'm being, now my whole life is flipped because of that concept. It's been really helpful for me. So who do I want to be today? I want to be faithful. I want to be loyal. I want to be comforting, and I want to be energetic. What does a man like that do? He does these 7 things. And if you do those 7 things, what do you have? Bang, now we're talking.
Yeah.
But it has to be in that order. It can't be, I need more money. What do I have to do? Well, you're still being a bad steward, so you never grow. So that concept is like, it's not, I want to have a wife that has a lot of intimacy. Wrong. Who do I need to be the kind of man that creates safety, that makes my wife want to let her guard down and feel free?
Yeah.
These are 2 different conversations.
Yeah, it's powerful.
So that's what we're in the midst of, and we'll be in that for the rest of our lives. We do not have it together. We are not, marriage gurus. We are marriage survivors, and now marriage proponents and marriage. I guess we're excited. We're in something that is
a new phase.
It's a moving, living relationship, and it's a cool place to be.
How have you navigated? You mentioned money, and she, I think when one of your podcasts, she was like an Uber Eats driver and doing like multiple jobs at one point, because essentially you went from having money to not making an income.
Yeah.
When I wouldn't say you were kicked out of the church and in a sense of a community of people and pushed to the side for a season of life for a lot of people, right? And not considered or not given opportunities, right? How did you make money these last 4 years? How have you,
Good
did people give you jobs? Did you give you a chance somewhere? Did you make your own money? Like,
I'm good at making money. Yeah. And so that's like, I had to put my hand up and ask for some help. So I had some friends that loved us enough to be able to help us, because we had some money saved, but like no one's prepared to blow up your entire life with no like plan. I mean, it was just awful. And so very scary place to be. And by the grace of God, we made it out, and we needed help to get to a place where I could, in a healthy way, begin to start businesses and do things again.
Wow.
So for that first chapter, I had a job with an amazing company, a guy in Florida named, Joe Johnson, who was just hired me. I said I need a job, and you have availability, and I loved it. I did that for almost well over a year. Laura had 2 jobs at that time, and we just were like, this is where we're at. Let's go.
Make it work.
We're going to do it all again, and we have. And now our life is different, and it's a beautiful place to be. But yeah, money. We were in love without money. We learned how to love when we had money, and then we found out again, we're not about money because we still love each other, and now we're doing better than we were. So
Yeah.
I think, it's definitely a cool story of God providing. And when people say the church kicked you out, yes and no, there were churches and pastors that definitely helped us out. Absolutely. Yeah, no fanfare, nobody knows. So that's not a completely fair shot of like, oh, the church turned their back on you. No. Mine did.
Right.
And that's actually okay because I was, the way it was handled, whole nother combo, but there was faithful people that helped us out. So we are the products of really graceful, precious friends that were willing to stand with us in the fire, not just with words, with money, with help, with grace. And so I wouldn't be sitting here without them.
And how has your relationship with God changed since all of this?
So my relationship with God has been strong my whole life, even in the midst of my own sin and pain and lies. And it's funny because I used to work with I still do, a lot of drug addicts. And in New York, you find there's like this underbelly of functioning drug addicts, heroin, cocaine, meth, you name it. And there's people who look like you, and they are dying as addicts. And so that was I became one as well. But I remember talking to a guy who said, man, I still hear God's voice when I'm high. And I know that's not right, but God never leaves me. I can hear him when I'm high, I can hear him when I'm drunk, I can hear him when I'm sober. And I used to wonder, I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm never going to tell somebody, no, you didn't. But I look back on my own life, and even while walking towards bad decisions, I can remember vividly feeling compelled to not do this, or there's a way out and there's an option here. And so I've never been like mad at God, except for the combo about how I even got there. But I had so many opportunities, Lewis, to do this right, to own it, to get help, and I didn't take it. So I was never like, why God? I'm like, I know why. I'm dead without you, and I just haven't listened. I haven't obeyed, and this is the price. So I feel like my relationship with God now is I think there's a different type of pressure when you're a preacher, and it's not good, it's not bad, it's just different.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed this season of just being able to, everything that I discover, I get to put it back in myself. Wow. And most of my life, I discover something, try to do something, and you try to help other people with it. That's a beautiful thing to do. I love that. I love preaching.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But in this season, it's like, I'm going to preach with my life when I can, but my relationship with God is just, I would use the word, I feel soft, feels kind, feels generous, feels graceful.
That's beautiful.
Those are words I would not have attributed before. I felt like I had an agreement with God before that I'm a lost cause, but I'm going to still work as hard as I can for you.
Wow.
And I want to make God proud. I want to let, Jesus who saved me feel like I was worthy of the sacrifice. I'm going to try to do what I can do. And it was,
you're going to try to perform, right? Yeah.
It wasn't like I knew, it was more like I knew that I was missing it in some areas, and I still wanted to be effective, and I still wanted to be helpful.
Yeah. I want to go back for a second to something I meant to ask you about your relationship with Laura, your wife. Esther Perel talks about this, and I've had a number of different therapists and experts come on and talk about this concept of gaslighting. Mm-hmm. And I heard Laura say this in your podcast. She was like, I was gaslit by you for many years, right? And lots of terms, narcissism and all these other terms get caught up with gaslighting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But how did that affect you? Because again, I think a lot of women have experienced that in some stage of their life. Yeah. Sometimes with their father, sometimes with their boyfriend, sometimes with whatever, right? Yeah. when she said like, hey, you gaslit me for this many years, you know, how did that impact you, or how have you been able to navigate repairing that?
Yeah.
And again, for the women watching or listening, how can they do their best to sniff out and speak up when they feel like they might be being gaslit by someone in their life, so that they don't, it doesn't continue for years?
Yeah. So I think Laura would say on some of this, she should have gone with her gut and she should have taken it out from me and went to somebody else and said, this is what I think is going on.
Not just saying, are you lying to me? And you say, no, I'm not lying to you. And then her be like, okay, I'm just going to trust him.
So there was a moment in our marriage where I did that kind of gaslighting for a while, but there was a moment where she had kind of caught me in a lie that was tough for me to get out of.
Really?
And she stared at me in the eyes and she said, why don't you tell me the truth? And I said, I'm telling you the truth. And I remember we had this combo and she said, I don't believe you. And that was the day that we were never the same as a married couple. I think in her mind, it was like this protection mechanism where, because up until the end,
this is pre-scandal.
Oh yeah.
She looked you in your eyes and said,
I don't believe you. I don't believe what you're saying. Wow. And I'm not going crazy. And I'm not proud of this. It's hard to talk about, but I think I was at times cruel with the way that I would, the way that I would present my own case. It was a way that was just overpowering. So it'd be like, I'm good with words, you know, as you are, and there's a way you can, you know, manipulate
language in the conversation and throw a bunch of stuff.
Tense. And I think what Laura and I have found out is if you're a wife, there's a line of weird paranoia. We're not talking about that. We're talking about if you feel something's up, you probably need to get someone who you trust to soundboard a little bit. And I think as a husband, if there's mass defensiveness with aggression, you got serious problems. So I would on the side of the amazing women that are avid listeners for you, it's a red flag for sure. Doesn't mean that there's something going on, but people who have nothing to hide nothing. So if it's, let me see your phone, no. Why? Because of the principle of like, it's easier to slide that thing over. And then you can talk about where's this distrust coming from. But it's after you have tried to, you know, validate how you feel. Like validation doesn't always mean agreement. It just means I hear you. Okay, that's a thought. And if you want my perspective, here it is. But to shut it down with a direct, you know, denial in a fight, that typically leads to, or is a symptom of, or a sign of some stuff going on.
Something's
That's just a reality.
Yeah,
I mean, over half of marriages end due to infidelity. So this isn't like a rare thing. This is how you get caught up in lies. I don't think most men who set out to gaslight are trying to be evil manipulators. I think from my own experience, you just catch yourself in such a stupid position where your only hope is to just cause as much confusion as you can
to get out of it. Yeah.
To get out of it. And that's
wow.
So, and Laura's talked to a lot of women, and sometimes now she'll ask me for my perspective as she's helping somebody, but I think she encourages women to go with your gut. Go with your gut and ask somebody about it and try to gauge the reaction of the man in question. Is he open to it? Is he trying to, or is he defensive? Like that defensiveness is a big word that Laura uses a lot. And it's still something I have to continue to always work through because
Really?
I'm still getting through that. Like from all the way back when I was an abused little guy, when I didn't feel protected, I've always been a fighter. I've always been a guy who's like, tell me the rules so I can break it. Didn't know where that was from. Found out, and because my therapist asked me, she's like, have you always gotten in trouble? I'm like, oh, since kindergarten. She's like, if you're at a red light and nobody else is around, are you running that thing all day? I'm like, everyone doesn't do that?
Right.
I'm like, why? It doesn't make any logically. Why would I stay? I mean, that law is stupid. And she's like, yeah, not everybody thinks like that. There's a lot of people who stay at that red light. I'm like, well, those people must be really fun at parties. You know? But the concept of understanding where defensiveness comes from, everything has a root. And once I found out that root, I catch myself all the time now going, why am I being defensive? I have nothing to hide. Please start that again.
Wow.
And I had an interaction with my neighbor the exact same way. She's an older lady from the Ukraine, and we We're having a very mild neighborly conversation about where my dog leaves his, and it was going so bad. And I went, ma'am, do you mind if we start over?
Wow.
And she goes, no. And I said, I'm Carl. You are whatever. I started this one. This is on me. I can make sure my dog doesn't do this. And we laughed but I had to consciously snap out of this, my fight first, defend first mechanism. So it's not something that I just have arrived at. So I think in general, defensiveness is typically something to look into.
What I'm hearing you say is if a woman is experiencing uncertainty in their gut, lean into it.
Yep.
Confront the man they're with.
Yes.
And if they still feel uncertain, if that man hasn't made her feel safe to what she needs to feel safe, whether it's justified or not, but it's whatever she needs to feel safe, then maybe you need to find a therapist to talk to, a friend to talk to, and say, hey, am I going crazy here? I feel like I might be gaslit, but he's telling me he's saying the truth, but something still doesn't feel right. And start kind of unpacking that and see how to take the next steps. To get to create safety for yourself and clarity within the relationship.
We've been doing this for our whole life. We've been helping couples, and rarely there is the type of marriage with the wife or the woman is super paranoid and it's crazy. It's few and far between them.
Right, it's rare.
Very few is there. Where did you go? Went to the gym? No, you didn't.
And it's more of probably a wound they haven't healed.
Correct.
From someone else doing
and
this
that
to them.
is a legitimate thing. So for the guy who's sitting home right now, to like, it's not me. I'm the other guy. It's like, okay, it could be, but that's why it's always helpful to get another set of eyes in there to say, what's going on? Let me objectively look at your situation and just try to give you all some wisdom. And it's crucial. If we would have done that, who knows?
Right. Man, this is powerful. I'm curious, how do you feel about the leader of the church who kind of helped you, brought you up? What's your relationship with him like now? What's his name? Brian
Houston. Yeah.
How do you feel about him? What is your relationship or lack of with him now 4 years after this?
No relationship, zero communication. I think we had one email exchange after I was fired. And we haven't talked since.
Really?
It's nobody's fault. It's just kind of the way it is. I don't harbor any bitterness towards him. I think in that way, our relationship, I failed him as one of his leaders, and that's the reality.
And he failed you in certain ways.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. But I failed first, so that's what I get to focus on. And how he handled it afterwards, that's another discussion for other people. It doesn't do anything for me. So I have learned how to stay free of offense is to look at myself in the mirror. Where did I go wrong? What did I do? And then when I feel the temptation to point fingers or want to get mad, which is there, it can be sometimes, often. Other times I don't think about it. There'll be some days where will be consumed with anger or bitterness or whatever. I just try to give grace because I need it. I need people to give me grace. So I know the measure that I give will be given back to me. So I think about that often when I want to judge anybody. I'm like, I don't want that kind of judgment coming back at me. So
did you used to be more judgmental pre-scandal?
No. I think subconsciously I was way less judgmental because of the stuff that I was hiding.
Because you knew you had some. You're like, it's okay. You can, I don't judge you because I know in the back of my mind.
Yeah,
I'm doing some of this.
It was a juggle. I mean, because there are times where I would be hardcore, almost legalistic on some things, and other things super gracious. So that was a confusion in my own mind from my own life. But with Brian, I focus on the good too. Some people go through a horrible situation and they don't grieve properly, so all they remember is the pain.
Yeah.
I got great help with grieving. So I grieved my relationship with one of my spiritual heroes. He was that. He's like, I have the greatest dad in the world. Brian was, the next thing I had to a man that I really looked up to and trusted. He helped me, gave me a chance to do great things, and it went bad.
Yeah. What do you say to people how have you learned to express this and feel this? That when a man or woman does a bad behavior or hurts someone or does something that they shouldn't do, legally, morally, ethically, all the different things that you could do. But they're not always that way.
And a lot of the times they are also doing some good or kind or generous or, gracious or all these different things, graceful. How do we navigate this, the dynamics of, okay, there's a person in my life who did something really bad to me, but they've also done a lot of good.
Mm-hmm.
Are they a bad person? Are they evil and wrong? Should I never speak to them again? It's like, how do you forgive? How do you navigate the mess of human beings when we make mistakes? I don't know how to answer this question, but I'm curious.
I'm not sure there is one answer to that.
Yeah.
I actually think it depends on what's your outcome.
Case by case,
What
too.
do you want? Do you want justice? Do you want accountability? Do you want peace? Do you want grace? I think it's just everyone has to make that decision of like, what am I after? So like my relationship with Brian, am I after justice? Am I after accountability? Some of that stuff might be required. I'm after peace in my soul. So that's my choice. How do I get peace in my soul? I forgive and I give grace and I leave the other stuff to other people and God. That's my choice. If I wanted justice, maybe I'd have a different response. So I think what's your vision is a great question to ask people. When you're mad, like, what's the end of the road here? If you don't know it, you got to rethink it, because then you're just wandering around, swinging at stuff you don't even know. Like, my goal for this situation here is to have a friendship again. So I'm going to navigate it a certain way.
Yeah.
My goal here is peace, and I never want to talk to them again. This is how I'm going to navigate.
And I'm creating a boundary.
Yeah. Both are healthy.
Do you think you could ever have a relationship with Brian again?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I think
not
the
something in
short
your mind.
answer is God can do anything. Life is long.
Yeah, sure.
I'm good. Like I don't think we'd ever have I can't say that. I don't know. It's not on my radar.
Not something you're thinking about, yeah.
I got so many
You got your wife
things I got to focus on that it's like, hey, God bless you. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say, what you do. I hope the best for you.
Yeah.
Because I know that they've walked through some horrible things as well.
Sure. If you could sit in front of your 20-year-old self right now, with the wisdom you have, the lessons you have, the experience you have, knowing how you were thinking back then, the stuff you were carrying, the lies you were holding on to within yourself, the shames, the insecurities back then, and you could give a personal sermon to yourself.
Yeah.
From this perspective.
Yeah.
What would you share? And if you had to completely eliminate anything about you and your ego, and it only came from the best way possible, it came from God through you to this 20-year-old version of you.
Okay. Love it.
What would you
What did I say? Okay. There's two answers here. One is, how much do I want to play this hypothetical game?
Yeah.
Because there's a part of me, I've been a youth pastor as well, and I have a teenage son. My brain at 20 was not the same brain.
You're not thinking a certain way.
I've preached messages to 20-year-olds.
They're not going to receive it.
And they nod.
They don't receive it.
They can't. They don't have the function. So for me to sit down with my 20-year-old self and say, hey, bro, you got sexual brokenness. That's not your fault. But my gosh, where that leads, so much pain and carnage. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to send you to this place, and you're going to talk about all the embarrassing that you've done. And this 20-year-old would have
Won't
been
do
like,
it. Screw you.
Get the hell out of here. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm good. I'm running. God's forgiven me. I'm saved. I'm filled with the Holy Spirit. I'm doing good things with my life. I'm going to get through it. God is a God that brings freedom. I'm going to pray, and I'm going to get boom. And some of those things are true. But to sit there with that 20-year-old and say, hey, this stuff is deep. And it takes a lot of work. So let's do it now. Oh, Lord Jesus.
I'm glad you said that, because I can relate to that. Like, people would tell me stuff when I was a teenager, be like, I'm just going to go after my dreams and do this, and don't tell me what to do. It's like,
yeah,
you may not be in a space to hear it, but let's imagine.
Okay, if I was.
So I'm glad you said
Yes.
that, because I think you need to be open to receive a message also.
And it builds regret. Well, what can we do about that?
Of course,
so,
yeah.
But if we go back and we do it, and it's possible.
And say you're a completely open soul.
Open 20-year-old.
Open mind, open heart, and you say, whatever message I need to hear.
Okay.
Not that this is going to change your life, but it's like, if you could just speak a message to your younger self.
What's funny about answering questions is you float in and out on your podcast of remembering you have millions of people listening and then nobody. It's very tricky. because you feel totally free. You're just talking. Oh yeah, yeah. Let me just make sure that I'm answering
Yeah.
this. So I think I would say to that guy, let's start to feel all your feelings. What are they? I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to put you down. You're not going to get in trouble. Let's talk about how you feel. And I would lay out all these topics. And I'd say, how do you feel about sex? How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? Let's just talk about it. That is the beginning of freedom. And there is some backwards Christian teaching that I probably was a propagator of, which is like, hey, die to your flesh, die to your feelings, which there's truth to that. But I'm not sure everything's flesh. I'm not sure everything's about this murderous killing of, I think there are things in us as humans that we need to talk about. And I have a friend, his name is Steve. He lives here in California, and he taught me this principle of like, if you had all your feelings around a table, who gets to talk?
Oh, that's interesting.
Who gets to talk? All of them should be able to talk. It doesn't mean they get the chair, but it means that wounded 15-year-old, he gets to talk. The lawyer in you, he gets to talk. The guy that's bitter, he gets to talk. That's how you get to know who you are, who's in control, who's weighing in too much here. There's a part of me that really doesn't like people, man. I'm just going to say it. Now, I'm going to direct that guy where to go. I'm going to stay in control of it, but that's there.
Interesting.
It's not right. It's not wrong. It's just how I feel. Oh my gosh, Lewis, even talking about it feels good. It's like just beautiful. Like we are so quick to judge ourselves and to hurt ourselves and to try to kill the bad stuff in us. And there's some beauty in that. And it's very dangerous because you might be killing something that's in the process of change.
Oh man, that is so
Maybe
true.
it just hadn't evolved yet.
That is so
Maybe
true.
it's on the journey somewhere. Can you imagine? Like I have a 15-year-old son. You can't imagine shutting him down forever because he was working something out. Doesn't make any sense. If someone tried to say that to my son, he has a feeling right now and you shut him down, you kill him, I would obviously defend my son because he's growing. And there are parts of us, I think, that can use a little bit less judgment, a little bit more discovery. And from there, let's go. Let's talk. This doesn't mean you're acquiescing to every feeling and you're that part of the weird generation we live in that tells young people to go with what you feel, which is like, I appreciate the sentiment, but if you live a life according to how you feel, we know where that leads. There has to be more to life than going with how you feel. Our feelings are so important though. So what do? The world that I came from, it was all or nothing.
Really?
It was like feelings don't matter, kill them, stand on top of them, be empowered, do what God says to do. It's this very empowering version of life change. Okay. And then we used to judge everybody else.
Really?
The therapy people, the feelers, the inner child.
What's wrong with these people?
The inner child people. Oh, here we go with this guy again. Oh, I actually had someone tell me recently that when I use the word addict, I'm using victim language. Oh yeah. And this guy's a smart dude. And I went, wow, man, that's really interesting. I remember I used to think like you. So I'm not mad. I'm not judging you, but I'm going to keep using it. Number one. Number two,
Wow.
I passionately disagree that by me admitting that I have addictions, that I'm using victim language. You're hearing what you want to hear.
Right.
It's not an excuse. Because I had an addiction to something doesn't mean that it absolves my behavior. It just means I'm going to frickin' fix it because I know exactly what it is. It's not just a bad day. It's not just a propensity. It was an addiction. So if that's victim language to somebody, God bless you. To me, it's overcoming language. When you can actually be strong enough to say stuff like that, man, it's some of the strongest men I've ever seen have been in a rehab for people that have blown up their lives. And they're not strong because of their possessions. They're strong because of what they're willing to change, what they're willing to talk about.
Yeah. What was the biggest lesson from rehab that you learned that how you learned growing up in church kind of dismantled certain things about your relationship to self or viewing other people who had been through challenges? What did that month long in rehab teach you?
My gosh, the longest month of my life. They call it hugging the cactus, which is my favorite way to describe what rehab is like. It's like you got to do it, and it's horrible.
It's painful.
But a hug's a hug. I think one of the things that I realized in rehab, especially with my faith, is that I think I was cutting the power of God short by not understanding how many people can help. So I am a guy that believes in the power of prayer. I believe that God is a redeemer. He's a forgiver, that he can break the yoke, break the chains. That's the God that I believe in, 100%. The way he does that, though, can sometimes be through a doctor in a white jacket. It can be through a counselor. It can be through someone who's not even a Christian, or believes what I believe. Like there's so many things. And I think I was such a true blue believer that I'm gonna willpower this. I didn't see it like that. I thought it was God power, and I was mistaken. Really, I was proud in my own ability. I'm gonna get through this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna overcome this. And rehab, I left like this. I'm gonna be all right. I'm gonna be all right. I'm not crazy. I'm not a bad person. I have some issues, and I'm gonna frickin' spend the rest of my life uprooting them, making sure they don't transfer into my kids. I'm gonna tell as many people as I can that freedom is available. That's what I learned at rehab, and I got a lot of work ahead of me, and I'm gonna embrace it. I'm not gonna reject it, and I just can't trade that experience for anything. I mean, it was an awful, beautiful mess there.
Wow, that's beautiful, man. Do you ever see yourself wanting to lead a church again in some way?
No and yes. I think that no, in that it's not on my heart, it's not on my mind. No plans. I do love reading silly articles about myself still fun once in a while. We have this big rollout. We're gonna do a podcast in the church, and it's like, hey, hate to break it to you, that's not us anymore. Like there's no rollouts. We don't live that life anymore. We're doing a podcast because it's great and it's a venue and an avenue that's smart, and we're gonna crush that. That's it. There's no church coming after this.
Yeah.
But life is long, and I am open to whatever I feel compelled to do. I mean, if I were to ever do a church again, it would be completely different, and it would be vetted, and I'd have everybody that I trust and love stand in front of me and agree that it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't fathom that being within the next 10, 15, 20 years of my life. I got so much I want to do.
Yeah.
And the world is so big. I could do a lot of great things, and we're seeing that already. So
Yeah.
I feel like, especially because of the weight of what we went through, I think the appropriate thing to do is just continue to change my life and see where we end up. So I'm open to it. I have no plans, but man, I never would have thought I'd be sitting here talking to you in Los Angeles, California, talking about this.
Yeah,
so
man.
I mean, far be it from me to tell God what my plans are.
What's going to happen? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, here's how this is going to go.
Yeah. Here's my plan. He's going to say, nope, that's
Yeah,
not it.
Yeah.
I want people to, a couple final questions for you. But again, we're talking about a new podcast that you and your wife have launched called Lights On with Carl Lentz. And the first few episodes are fascinating. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot about you guys. You learn a lot about human nature and challenges that people go through and how to navigate getting through them. And realizing that there is peace, there is forgiveness, there is freedom on the other side if you choose to go through it all the way. So it's beautiful to watch,
Thank
man.
you, man.
And
Thank you.
I want people to check it out. Are you on social media right now as well?
I
see
am.
you're posting clips, but have you been posting other stuff too, like Carl Lentz on Instagram?
I'm going real slow
Yeah.
into that for my own sobriety because I was out of it for so long, and I didn't miss it for a millisecond.
You
No,
weren't
oh
on
my
social media for
gosh.
years, huh?
No, for years. I put like 2 posts up in
That was
4
it.
years just because. And so now I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but I have some people helping me with it, so I can keep it
A distance.
keep it off me, and I'm just using it for the delivery right now, not the interaction.
Yeah, that's
So
good.
I'll answer 5 or 6 people just because I appreciate them being there on the comment thing, but like I'm not wading through it going, does this guy approve? Is this guy can't? Like I've been through too much to do that. So I am back on social media in what I believe to be a healthy, healthy way.
What are the lessons you learned from being off social media for almost 4 years?
That it is very, very, very effective if you use it wisely. Very, very deadly if you don't.
Wow.
There's really no middle ground. So if you are prepared to handle social media in a responsible, diligent, intentional way, it's a beautiful thing. But if you let your guard down, it's going to be a doorway to images that you don't want to see, don't need to see, voices that have no right to spend any time in your head. Social media is a conduit of that. Like, who on earth told us that we get to open this phone and let the opinions of many, torment our lives? What are we doing? But we all do it. We all really do look at comments and approval. And we know that it's stupid, and we all do it. I got some likes, got some comments, got some interactions. It's like, all right, we're going to play the game if we have to, but this is so stupid. Like, that doesn't mean it was good.
Right.
The fact that, your podcast is huge and great, and yes, it has mass interaction, but that's not where your value is. It just happens to sometimes line up with legit things. But I have a feeling you would still do what's on your heart to do, regardless of if it was filled with fanfare. I just have a feeling.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people
I started it with no one
nothing.
following
Nobody
or
was
listening,
watching.
and
Nobody
it
was
like
listening.
one person at a time. It was like, and I just did it because I enjoyed it, right?
Yeah.
I'm still doing it now because I'm fascinated by human beings and how we
Yes.
can all improve our lives.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Yeah, I spent 7 days recently without my phone on, and it's just freeing to like even just take a day or take hours where you're not on your phone is a freeing experience. It
Yep.
creates space. You can
Yeah.
think.
Well, your brain is wired to not do that. Have you ever reflected on your life and been like, man, I wish I was on social media more?
Yeah, never. Yeah.
I'd never once.
Scary thing is to say, how many years have I been on social media?
There you go.
Like, how much time have I consumed just on my phone?
Yeah. I've never once been like, man, when Roman was 5 and, my girls were little baby girls, I wish I would have sat there and scrolled longer.
Yeah.
Like, it just never happened. So I want that to be a part of my decision making. I have gone, I wish I would have spent more time looking at some eyeballs
Yeah.
and just enjoying some moments. So that means in this chapter, I'm not messing around.
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy, who wrote in the book Science and Health, she said, stand porter at the door of thought, because we need to be guarding our minds more. We need to be guarding our thoughts more and stand porter and make sure we say, oh, I see that. I don't want to be looking at that.
Yeah.
And man, have I been guilty of like looking at the wrong stuff for most of my life.
Same.
Right? And those images influence your brain, your thoughts, your mind, your dreams, influence your DNA. The more you are consuming things, listening, viewing, looking at, whatever it might be, and then fantasizing, thinking about, being angry about, whatever it is.
Ruminating.
Yeah. And one of the things my dad did that I really appreciate as an adult when we were growing up is when there were commercials, we didn't watch the news because he didn't want us to watch fear-based entertainment.
Wow.
So there was always bad stuff happening on the news. So he's like, why am I going to show this? We can read something and read this happened today. Okay, I'm informed on the news. I don't need to be entertained by fear to create a reaction of more fear in me.
Yeah.
So we didn't watch the news, but he was informed and read the paper. And we never watched commercials when we were watching TV because the commercials were filled with prescription drugs. And here's what's wrong with people, and here's what you need to solve it: medication. Most of the commercials you watch today are about the medications based on a pain you have.
True.
And he didn't want us to be influenced on the material part of our body and needing medication to heal versus prayer, harmony,
right,
correct thinking to help heal. And my dad was not perfect by any means and had his own challenges and lies and problems that I had to deal with as well. But those things were a great reminder of like standing porter at the door of our mind and our thoughts and protecting ourselves from images. And Martha does a great job of reminding me, I think men can probably, allow images to come in more frequently in terms, just in general. And she's always like, we've got to make sure we're guarding our minds from news content, from images, from whatever we're seeing. And our intention here at the School of Greatness is to hopefully put out positivity, hopefully put out as much information that is good or that can help people.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that you guys are putting out that information as well on your show. And before I ask a couple final questions, Carl, I want to acknowledge you for your journey, your healing journey, sharing with others that healing is possible. Your healing journey privately with your wife and your family that most people will never know about, what you guys have gone through. Obviously, you're sharing some of it. And acknowledge you for just owning the things that you're ashamed of, that you aren't proud of, that you did to hurt yourself, that you did to hurt others, because it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do. So I acknowledge you for owning these things and for saying, I'm going to figure out whatever the meaning is of this and make the most of it to serve, which it sounds like you're doing. I want to serve.
Yeah.
Whether 5 people listen, 5 million people, if it's in working at a job, if it's doing this, if it's just It's what it sounds like you're doing now. So I acknowledge you for the journey you're at right
Thank you,
now.
brother.
I'm excited to see how you continue to serve people, and how you continue to live your life. And I'm just grateful that you were so open and honest here with everyone. I think it's really powerful. So I appreciate
You
you.
don't leave a lot of room. You don't leave a lot of room to take it. And I say this with that standing port. You say porter?
Stand porter at the door of thought.
So there's an old writer, Paul, the Apostle Paul. Take captive every single thought. That is, to me, where this keeps coming back to. Is like we have to really be careful that we don't take for granted that the stuff we're thinking is good or bad. We need to check it out. But to me, that's such a concept that it flows in so many different ways. But when I read that in the Bible, I'm just like, I need to take captive every thought. And that to me, I've had to change my mind. I've had to change what I say. And it, in turn, has changed who I am. But it started for me changing my mind.
Wow, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
This is a question I ask everyone towards the end. It's called the 3 truths. And another hypothetical question. You've had many of them today. But if you could imagine that you get to live as long as you want.
Yep.
You're very old and you live a life of service and you see your kids grow up. All the good things happen. But it's the last day on earth for you. And for whatever reason, everything you've shared to the world, your podcast, this interview, books, anything you've ever put out there, we don't have access to. It's gone from this physical world. Got to go with you or somewhere else. But you get to leave behind 3 truths. And this is all the world would have of your content. It's kind of like, what would be the 3 biggest lessons you would share if it was the last day of your life and we don't have access to any other content that you have? What would those 3 truths be that you would leave behind?
Wow. Unbelievable question. Did you think of that?
Yeah.
Well, I have a feature on Lights On where I end it with asking people the 3 truths. I'm like, let's just steal it on the spot. I think the first thing I would say is that God loves people and he wants to have a relationship with you. So don't settle for distance when you can have intimacy with God Almighty and Jesus saves. Like, that to me is a beautiful thought that that's the very, if I had to go today, I'd want people to, what did that guy say? He said that God loves us. Wow. I'd be happy with that. So the next 2 might be good, but man, that's the one that has been the most powerful for me when it went from religion to Jesus is real. I'm not crazy. The grace of God changed my life. Like, that to me is something I would love people to think about. And then the second thing would be kind. And then a period. Because to me, kindness is such a beautiful currency that the reason why we don't see it in our world a lot is because people don't see it in their own lives a lot. And we can't figure out why people are so nasty. Can you imagine people that are nasty to you? Can you imagine what their head must be like? Like, even going back into social media, I see some of the comments people leave me and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not even mad. You must be brutal to yourself. So every day I try to remind myself, probably gonna have to end up getting it tattooed because I'm that slow, that thick-headed. Be kind today. What does that mean? I don't know. Let's go find out.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And then be present. Because I feel like I spent a lot of my life going to the next thing, going to the next thing and never enjoying what I actually had. And I never want to fall victim to that again. I look back at my life and I'm like, I never, ever really took good control of being present. A lot of it was my sin. A lot of it was my brain. A lot of it was my life. And some of it was just regular human pressure. Now I'm forcing myself, and I'm an ADHD 45-year-old, bro. I'm not designed to be able to be the guy who meditates, but I have chosen to become a man that is willing to be present. And that means there are times where I need to sit down and I go, you know what? It's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. So let me be present. And it's changed my life.
Beautiful, man. One final question, but I want to make sure people check out the podcast, Lights On,
Please.
With Carl Lentz,
Yeah.
and your wife, Laura, that shares so much. So again, if you're a woman watching or listening, check it out because you hear a lot from Laura,
Yes, you do.
sharing all of her thoughts, all of her feelings, what she's dealt with, how she's recovering, how she's learned to forgive herself, you, all the different things.
Yeah.
and it's fascinating conversations. Multiple episodes in that series. You got your clips on social media.
Yep.
Carl Lentz on social media, Instagram, and everywhere else.
And then the B-side is the platform that my podcast is on. So it's a platform built around vulnerability. It's almost like a recovery thing in that the only thing that platform wanted to do was to build a place where you couldn't get canceled and you had to be honest. So only a couple voices on there, of which I'm one, but I jumped at the chance to work with them because the team is epic. But the platform hopefully is going to be what the future looks like for every platform. So it's from the founder to everybody on it, our one goal is, are we being honest? That is what the B-side is. So people can check out that app. It's a B-side app.
Okay.
It's just cool. It's stuff like it's men like you, people who are changing what people think about vulnerable men. I doubt anybody would look at you and go, that's a weak dude. That day is over. People look at you, this huge, strong, charismatic, kind man, and go, oh man, he's vulnerable. Well, man, imagine if our world equated men with being kind and vulnerable.
Sure.
What kind of world would we have?
Absolutely, man. That's my mission too, man. I mean, obviously we're all imperfect in our own ways, but trying to become better every day is the goal.
Same.
Final question. What is your definition of greatness?
I think greatness is staying true to what you feel God has called you to do. That's great. It's the pursuit. It's not necessarily the outcome, because there are some things that look greater. Like someone might have billions of dollars, but that wasn't great. And conversely, there's a man that's loved his wife, raised his kids, been faithful in his community. And that's what God called him to do, and he was faithful to it. So I feel like that, to me, greatness is, we're all going to get called to do different things, but how did you stay faithful to it?
Wow.
That's what a great man is.
I counsel people all the time that have everything and more that they ever wanted, and they're still searching for more. How? It's because maybe the focus, we were sold a lie. Success doesn't always mean bigger, more, greater. Now I know I'm gonna lose some people right here. Because everybody thinks